Hey everyone, I hope you're having a good day. Today I wanted to share with you a few things that frugal people do on a regular basis. And some of these things are things that we do daily or monthly that have saved us a huge amount of money. If you don't know our story, my husband and I paid off $36,000 in debt in 2 years on one income while having two babies at that time. And it was an inconsistent income at that. And now we still live a very simple life, very frugal, very simple life. And we are able to do amazing things like cash flow cars and home improvements and vacations and help other people. And so we don't feel like we live a deprived life. We feel like we live an amazing one, but we just made a few small swaps. So let's go. Okay, frugal people have an emergency fund, and I realize that that's a really easy thing to say and a harder thing to do because building up an emergency fund does take work, but I promise if you are focused, it will happen a lot faster than you think it will. I know that the recommended amount is $1,000 to start out with. If you follow the Dave Ramsey baby steps, that's the first step, is to save up $1,000 emergency fund. I think that's a great place to start. I never wanted to stay there even while we were paying off debt. A little bit more comfortable having a little bit more money in there. I really think that like $500 per person, so for a family that would be more than $1,000, is a more comfortable place to start, but $1,000 is still great. So focusing on that emergency fund and putting everything that you have towards it in the beginning is a great idea. And you know, recently I was listening to NPR and they were talking about how this big federal study that surveyed thousands of Americans showed that 4 out of every 10 people, so 40% of the people surveyed, could not handle a $400 emergency. They would not have the cash to cover it. They would either have to sell something or swipe a credit card or go to a payday lender. Oh my gosh, it's so predatory. Or borrow money from a friend or a family member, which would in turn create a burden on that person they're borrowing money from. And that sounds nightmare inducing. And it kind of made me panic when I listened to it because it took me back to a time when my husband and I could not cover a simple emergency and we did have to borrow money. And it was embarrassing. And I never want to go back to that place. And so for me, having an emergency fund is paramount. Anyway, focus on an emergency fund. I made a video on how to quickly build your emergency fund. I will link it up in the card and in the video description below. If I forget, someone remind me. Frugal people do not leave money on the table, meaning if your company offers a 401k match, you contribute the max to get the max amount of match that you can. I know that a certain financial guru tells you not to do that while paying off debt, but in my personal opinion, my family, we took the match because I'm not going to turn down free money, and it didn't make us get out of debt any longer. Like we didn't stay in debt much longer than we would have if we hadn't done it. Us 5% extra towards our debt didn't mean that much, but 5% extra in a 401k where it's being matched and gaining interest. Come on, come on. But we also look for little ways to save by using ebates and honey when we're shopping online, or using things like Shop Tagger to find the best deal, or Camel. These are all great resources that are free that help you get cash back and save money without, swiping a credit card. You don't have to swipe a credit card to get cash back. There are plenty of websites that'll do that for you with no interest. Next, we buy a lot of things used. Our vehicles are used. We paid cash for our minivan at the end of 2017. Best decision ever. I love it. I never thought I would be a minivan mom, but I totally am. It is so much easier to load 3 kids into that thing than it was my SUV when I had 3 seats across. We paid cash for it and we saved up, and it was just like kismet. We saw it on the side of the road. It was well below what we had saved up for. It's a dream car. When we went to get the oil changed one day, the guy said, "This vehicle is in pristine condition." Yeah, we know. That's why we bought it. Thanks. It's not just vehicles we buy used. We also buy a lot of our tech refurbished. My phone was refurbished. My husband's, my laptop, my computer. I think our little Roku, I think that was refurbished. And we've ended up saving thousands of dollars over the years buying those refurbished items. They're the same and they don't cost you anymore. In fact, 75 bucks for an iPhone. Next, we eke out as much life out of something as we can. So that means if something tears up, we repair it before we replace it. For example, my husband works a blue-collar job, and his job requires him to have a certain type of boot, and that boot is very expensive. They cost about $120 per pair, and that is totally worth it, but we end up not needing to buy a new pair every single year because the place where we purchased them from also repairs them. For example, when the bottom of his boot started wearing out and they needed to be resoled, we took them back to the place where we purchased them. They resold them for a few dollars. The same thing with the stitching on the back of his boots. When that started to wear out, they put a new panel in, good as new. So we were able to really like stretch out how long those boots last. Plus, you're reducing that environmental impact. Next, we are always trying to evolve in our thinking about money or learn new things about money. So we listen to a lot of podcasts from money managers. We read a lot of books from people who've been financially or business successful. Right now, I'm listening to Everyday Millionaire by Chris Hogan. So we are constantly seeking to learn better ways to manage our money. And we don't all come from an equal background, right? It's not a level playing field. And so not everyone was given the opportunity to learn about finance in school. Not everyone's parents knew a lot about finance. And so I feel like as Jason and I learn, we want to pass on some of that information, via this channel, but also, even though we're not financial experts, we've run the Financial Peace University class at our church. We volunteered to do that. Our church didn't have a kit, and so Jason and I purchased one so that we were able to do that. And it's just really important to us now that we know to help others. Like frugal people are content. Contentment is a huge part of things. Being grateful for what you have, knowing that what you have is enough, and knowing that if you can't be happy with what you have now, you're probably not going to be happier when you have more. And learning to manage small things kind of turns into learning to manage big things later on. But if you don't find peace and contentment in where you are right now, you're not going to move forward. And so maybe we don't always have the best of everything, or we don't get somewhere as quickly as we want, but having contentment in the moment, being grateful for where our feet are planted, has brought us peace, and we're not constantly looking for the next big thing. In that same vein, I feel like we as frugal people understand that short-term sacrifice is where it's at. So I got a comment recently, and I'm going to read it to you because I really don't fully understand this mindset. It says, I think it's okay to pay off a large bill early, especially with extra money you make, but not at the expense of living and enjoying your life. I think that there's this idea that you have to spend money to enjoy your life, and I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. Some of the times in my life that have been the most peaceful and the most enjoyable have been the times when we didn't have the most money, when we were actually working on paying off our debt and we were at home with our littles, or when I was pregnant with my oldest and it was just my husband and I, and we just hung out together. We would go on walks. We would rent movies. We would read out loud. We would read out loud. This is going to sound crazy. But my husband would read Game of Thrones to me out loud, and then I would read like whatever I was reading to him out loud. And it was just this really silly time to connect over books. And we enjoyed life to the absolute fullest, but that didn't mean that we spent money. And right now we are paying off our house. So we are paying off our house early, and we have a plan laid out. We start August 1st. And if we stick to this plan and commit to it, then that means by December 2022, we will have our house completely paid off. So in less than 2.5 years, our home will be completely paid for. And so that means for 2.5 years, we're not going on vacation, and we're not making huge home improvements, and we're not doing a ton of extra stuff. We will have our house paid off in our 30s. I think that's worth it to go the next 50 years of my life without a mortgage, because I spent 2.5 years living a very simple life. So another trait is frugal people plan. We plan our meals. We plan our appointments. We plan our budgets. You can't plan for everything. That is not how life works. Things are going to come up. But because you have a plan in place for, okay, so because you have a plan in place, it makes those unexpected events a little bit easier. So one of the things that I do is I cook once a week now. I prep a lot of things for later in the week, but I also will go ahead and cook a bunch of stuff for the week, stick it in the fridge or in the freezer so I can throw it in the Instant Pot or slow cooker later, or, you know, just heat it up again later. And then if I have a sick kid, if I'm not feeling great, if we have a last minute appointment, that meal is already taken care of and we don't have to scramble and then end up at the drive-thru spending needlessly. Because we also make longer term plans. We sit down at the beginning of the year and we plan out different things that we want to do. For example, any trips that we want to take. We do birthday trips for our kids for their birthdays. And so my middle son's birthday is in May and we started planning beginning of January for what we wanted to do with him for his birthday. That way we're able to get the best prices, we're able to save for it, we're able to plan for it. It's not a fly by the seat of your pants life. And you know what? Some people like spontaneity, and that is fine. I'm not saying that we're better because we make plans. It makes me feel more secure. And I know that for a lot of people, this whole idea of planning feels stifling. And I get that because we're not all the same person and we don't all have the same needs and personalities and desires. And I think that that is a conversation that needs to be respected, that we don't all have to agree and we don't all have to be the same. And so if you're a spontaneous person, you just have to plan for spontaneity, which I realize sounds like I contradicted myself. But that just means that you set a little bit of money aside in a separate account so that when you want to, oh, your favorite band's coming into town, let's buy tickets last minute, or hey, do you want to go to the beach this weekend? You have that money there and you're not going into debt because of it. Okay, so this is something, Jason and I have hobbies that earn us money. So when I started YouTube, it was just a hobby, like, oh, I'm out of debt and I want to share with other people how I did it. And now I make a pretty decent chunk of change off this channel. And I'm cool with that. For a while, I kind of felt guilty. And then I thought, why? Like, does Oprah feel guilty for making money talking to people and helping them? Probably not. So maybe I shouldn't either. Not that I think I'm Oprah. Oh my gosh. But we shouldn't feel guilty for making money off of our hobbies. My husband does woodworking. So he builds me these beautiful things. Seriously, y'all, he built this bed. I mean, I know that's kind of dark, but do you see that? It's modeled after a Pottery Barn bed that costs $1,750 and he built it for $250. And so he has hobbies that save us money and could potentially make us money if he sold the things that he built, but he doesn't. This video is getting to be 20 minutes long, so I'm actually going to stop here and I'll make a second part to this later on. But I would love to know, what are some things that you do to be a little bit more frugal? I would love to know. Leave me a comment below and tell me. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye.